Welcome to the Threat Forest. Today I'm going to talk about threat hunting and I'm going to start a new series about threat hunting. This will be pretty much something that I haven't been doing on my blog quite a while now, and I haven't been actually very active lately in updating that either. As you have seen, I haven't been very active in updating the content for this channel either, which is mostly because I have been very busy with other topics and I unfortunately haven't had the time to create content for this channel. But today I'm able to create a little bit of content about the threat hunting. Oh, by the way, I want to mention that the DO13, it's still work in progress. I haven't been able to make the Regipy ingestion work yet, but it's still coming when I have time to solve that issue. I know where the issue lies currently. It's in the format how the JSON file is printed, because it's pretty JSON format. It's basically the Logstash is not able to use the default JSON formatted or in ingestion to read the file. So I need to work with it, and because it's quite complicated JSON file, it requires likely a bit of Ruby coding, and Ruby is not my strength. So please bear with me while I work on that. But today I'm working on something completely different, and I'm working with threat hunting with Defender for Endpoint. Why Defender for Endpoint? Well, that's one of the EDRs which I find to be the better ones, and I also have access to it currently for my own purposes, and this is pretty much paid by me. It's not sponsored by anyone, so it's my own instance of Defender for Endpoint where I have one agent installed only, unfortunately, but it's still better than nothing. I also like Defender for Endpoint and especially the KQL Gusto query language quite a lot, which it is using. So that's one of the reasons why MDE. So today I'm going to talk about one of the big persistences, scheduled tasks this time. And if you have ever talked with me about threat hunting, you know my opinion about hunting persistence. I like it quite a lot because quite often it's being used by all the different threat actors, especially the financially motivated ones. And scheduled task I picked because it has been fairly extensively used lately, and I have been reading different kind of material about scheduled task being used for malicious purposes, and also I know that it's one of the constant ones which is used often by different threat actors to either execute their malicious code or to remain persistent on the devices. Another reason for doing this is that I have been working with some threat hunters before who are actually using queries like ones which are looking for execution of sch tasks.exe. So that's one of the bigger binaries which is used by the malicious actors to create persistence, but it's also only a single way to create scheduled tasks. There are multiple others. You could probably write to registry directly and create a persistent task with any tools which are capable of writing registry, which is pretty much, well, it's very, very, very broad space. So my methodology for threat hunting usually is to try to look for the action done by the binaries rather than launch of the binaries themselves. And what I mean by this is that when you are creating a scheduled task with any tools, you most likely have registry keys being created in the background, and it's better to hunt for those registry creations or whatever other actions you have, just because then you're actually hitting multiple different binaries instead of hitting only one and hunting for only single binary being launched. And how I started to hunt this time was that I used the SSCH task.exe to create a task. And the particular task was launching Notepad at start, or I think it was on startup and not on logon. Yeah, it was on startup, and then I started to investigate what happens when I do that. Interestingly, at least when I was looking for Defender for Endpoint data, I didn't actually see a creation or modification to the created task in registry, which would actually show what was being launched as a scheduled task. Yeah, I had the data of a certain task being created with a certain name, but what was actually being launched was missing. So I look at the Defender for Endpoint data, and there is action type in device events table known as scheduled task created. I'm fairly certain that a couple of years ago when I was looking at that particular action type last time, there was no information of which binary was launched saved there, or maybe that event actually didn't even exist at the time, but now it did, and actually it did have all the required information for me. So that's the basis which I was used for hunting the creation of these scheduled tasks. Of course, we also need to take in account if this scheduled task has been created outside of the retention time, especially as with Defender for Endpoint and advanced hunting, the retention time is only 30 days. So I need to account for the older ones as well, or at least I want to do that. I'm not sure if need is the correct word. But nevertheless, I started with the creation and the scheduled task created device events table event. I verified by creating a scheduled task with PowerShell that is also logged to the same event. So I had the same level of details with PowerShell created scheduled task as well. And with that, I could start the actual hunting. And let me jump to the actual Defender for Endpoint console, the advanced hunting console, to show you what I created. All right, sorry, the screen is a little bit small, but I think you're able to see what I'm doing here. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, we have the action type limited to the scheduled task created event, and we are only looking into device events table. Then we need to, because it's the data is stored as a JSON into additional fields, we need to extract it. And first I extract the task name, task content, and subject username values from the additional fields. Then the task content actually has the more interesting information stored in it. So the triggers is one. I want to have the triggers so I know when this particular scheduled task is being launched. And the actions, meaning what actions does the scheduled tasks do. So from the actions, I actually need to drill down a bit more. I need to take the actions and get the exec value out of it. And from the exec value, I need to get the actual command and arguments. So how I'm doing this is I'm extracting the JSON from it, and I tried to look for better ways to do this because this is kind of ridiculous that I'm doing this in multiple layers, but unfortunately I actually couldn't find a better way to do it. I did look for full 2 minutes of how to do it, and I actually also asked from the AI assistants if they had an idea how I could do this more easily. Couldn't get any way which would bring any meaningful improvements to this. I did have some options to drill to the nested content directly, which would be my go-to option, but those didn't actually work with such a high amount of nesting, so that didn't actually work out. So unfortunately, I needed to do it like this. So in the end, I'm projecting only part of the information like device name, the initiation process file name, and account name, the name of the task, the command which it's actually launching, the arguments for the command, subject, username, triggers, and this test here is just I forgot to remove it, so that doesn't actually do anything. And then I'm saving this with the materialize function. So basically, it saves it to, I think it saves it to a cache, and when I'm actually using it for the next time, it shouldn't use all the calculation to calculate the same query again. It's a bit more efficient. So then I'm launching the actual query, and I'm looking for summarization by count of command and arguments, where the particular command and arguments are shown less than 3 times basically, and joining them back to the actual original query, which is cast with the materialize command. Then in the end, I'm projecting away to command 1 and command and arguments 1 fields, and if I run this query, it should bring where I actually hidden the results. Maybe I have. Let's hide that. Actually, yeah, it's easier to show. I have this kind of small window right now to record this video, so that's why. All right, so here we have two instances of Notepad. Launched. These are the ones which I created. So let's go into the details. Task name for the first one is, this is the malicious service. Okay, service was my mistake. This is not really service, it's a scheduled task. And then we can see the triggers. It's the boot trigger. As stated here, start boundary, blah blah blah, enable true. So we have that, and then the second one is notepad.exe. The name for this one is malicious task by PowerShell. So this one I created with PowerShell. Same thing, we have the triggers here. So here you can see the name of the task, the triggers, the process name for the process which created it, and then we have the actual process name with the arguments, which are empty this time because well, there's no arguments in this. I didn't have any arguments for starting Notepad, so it works fine. This is great to start with. Not sure how much of use this will be for you, but it's very simple query looking for creation of those scheduled tasks. Nothing too fancy, easy to get started. Okay, the second one then. So let's move to this one, and again I'm looking now for the running scheduled tasks, and I'm using the materialize again to cast the results. And while I was investigating to how this actually works, how the scheduled tasks are actually running, how they are started, the parent process is always svc host.exe, and there is a particular command line always, which is this one, which you can see here. So it has the -s schedule variable set to it, or argument set to it. So it's kind of easy to see when scheduled tasks are being launched. I'm not sure if this covers all the scheduled tasks, but in this instance where I was testing, yeah, both of them were covered. I'm only interested in particular information of this. I don't care about anything about the initiation process, for example. This could be maybe improve, but hey, it works as is as well. I'm projecting a couple of fields: timestamp, device name, account name, file name, process command line, process ID, and folder path, which are the ones which I find interesting. Then I'm making a couple of exclusions, like I'm excluding the mpcmd run.exe, which is basically Defender. Not my preferred way of excluding stuff by name, but I did it nevertheless. I said the folder path, I tried to remove everything under system32 unless the file name is cmd.exe or powershell.exe or rundll.exe or recasware32.exe. And the reason for that is that this limits the amount of noise which this query creates. I'm running the query and calculating how many times file name, process command line, folder path combination is seen, and if it's seen less than 10 times, I'm joining it back to the full data, and then again projecting only the fields of which I find valuable. So let's run the query and see the results. All right, we can see here the tasks which are being run as scheduled tasks. And here we can see the actual command lines, we can see the process name, and all that fun stuff. It's great. All right, so now you have this. How you're supposed to analyze this? Well, you have to count here how many times it has been run, but other than that, you probably just want to look at the data here. So you want to look at the folder paths, for example. Does they match something which makes sense? What are the command lines of the programs? Do they make any sense? Should these be running? And quite often you actually need to do further analysis on them as well, because they are not clear. They are not always clear what is malicious and what is not. All right, so that's kind of very, 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 very straightforward. So you're looking into any processes which have been seen less than 10 times, which are being launched as scheduled tasks. Easy, isn't it? All right, so I have the last query for today, and that's pretty much continuing on the same idea as the previous one. But here, this is pretty much something that I haven't used before, so I'm not entirely sure if it works as it should. To me, it seems it does. So what I do with this is that I make unique sets of file name, process command lines, and folder paths because I want to look for other actions that these processes do which have been launched as scheduled tasks. So I tried to look for ways how I can do this most efficiently, and I couldn't make it as efficient as I would like. So first things first, I create sets of this data, which is then stored in the running scheduled task um, function or whatever this is called, the cast ones. And then I'm actually turning or looking for those informations, and I'm making them distinct here. So I'm looking for distinct file names, distinct process command lines, and distinct folder paths, which I'm creating to these different variables. And then I'm using the union to look for information from different fields, different kinds of fields here, and here is why I want to have the information stored from these different field values to distinct values for that matter as well. And here I'm using the lower just to make sure that all the content looks the same. Sometimes there are differences on the capitalization of those files. And here I'm making sure that they look the same with the to lower function, and then I'm making sure that the initial process file name is found from the list of names, the initiating process command lines is found from the list of command lines, and the initiating process folder path is found from folder paths. And then finally, I'm making a summarizations, so the actions field should contain all the action types from all these fields, or from all these tables, and file name should contain the file name, and this, for example, includes launched process names and created file names and whatever. I have the same for remote IPs, and then I'm making this set or summarizing based on the process file name, ID, command line, blah 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 blah. Okay, so when I run this, if there are no hits, then nothing is in this table. If there is no hits, if the process which has been launched as a scheduled task doesn't do any actions, it's not returned here, I think, at least. But anyway, here I have the list. So I have this process with this process ID, this command line, and what it is doing here. So it's creating a process called conhost.exe. Unfortunately, these only make a single action. If there would be multiple actions, it should have several actions in this table. And this is very readable. Even if you have a limited amount of details here, it's very readable. If you would have all the details by all the processes, yeah, it would be a long table potentially, which would be very hard to read. So here you at least have a quick view of what is going on by each of these processes. So let's say that if you have a process which is creating child processes, creating network connections, loading DLLs or whatever, it's very interesting, and it's very, very interesting to look more into details what it's actually doing. And then you can use the device timeline or other queries to look into the details at that point. And that's the last query for today. So this way you are able to hunt for creation of those scheduled tasks, but also you can hunt for launches of those scheduled tasks if the retention time has already passed for the creation of them. But of course, you need to be very, very much filtering this down in your environments. You need to remember that this is basically environment where I have a single endpoint. There's not a lot of noise, but in reality, in your environment, there likely will be quite a lot of noise which you need to go through. I think that I will be going to create these kind of videos more. This is actually content which I like to create. I like to create those queries. So hopefully you enjoy this kind of content. If you do, please thumbs up the video, and also do subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. All right. Thank you for watching today, and have a great rest of the day. Bye.